I want to talk now about Nietzsche's understanding of the self. There's lots of talk in Nietzsche about becoming what you are, about self-mastery, about self-development. Well, what is this self of which we are supposed to gain mastery? It's not, according to Nietzsche, an atom or a kind of monad or an indissoluble point. And this is something that really comes from, I guess, Descartes and ultimately from religious tradition, the idea that the soul is something eternal, indivisible, kind of beyond analysis. No, says Nietzsche, the soul is mortal. Why should the soul be eternal? More likely that it lasts as long as your body. And why should the soul be a single thing? Maybe, says Nietzsche, the soul is more like a kind of multiplicity of interests and drives or subjectivities, right? So you can think of this as being a bit like the idea that some degree of multiple personality is normal, that we are all several people at once. Think about Song of Myself, right? Do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself, for I am legion, I contain multitudes. This is normal, right? It's normal for us to have kind of several different personalities or several different aspects to ourselves. We might have contradictory drives. We certainly have multiple drives. Basic animal stuff coming out of the ego. So, people want, think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, you want food and shelter and companionship. And the top one is called Self-Actualization. Well, that contains, everything else. So job satisfaction, or the sense that your life is being well lived, the sense that you're not wasting your time, that feeling of mastery, getting better at something, all that kind of stuff is packed away into the top peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we have lots of different drives. There's lots of stuff going on inside us. In a way, this model of the self isn't so new, because there's something like it there in David Hume. Hume says that the self isn't really a thing. It's more like a melody. So a series of notes played on the flute has a unity if it's a melody and not just some random tooting. But the unity of a melody isn't the unity of an item that persists through time. So the unity of a melody isn't like a mug or a tree or something that sits there being the same item from one moment to the next. Maybe the self is like that, says Hume. The self isn't a thing. Its unity over time is something more like the unity of a melody. Well, Nietzsche is in this kind of territory as well, except that, to maintain the musical analogy, there's polyphony. There are several voices singing at once, and they may not necessarily be in harmony. Well, it's up to us to bring some harmony to it. So your job as an individual is to bring a kind of harmony or unity to the various influences and drives and subjectivities that jointly make up you. And of course, you could achieve unity and harmony cheaply, right? There's easy harmony in simple melodies and simple tunes like, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something. But remember that Nietzsche says that in all the higher natures, they're always a battleground between several different moralities, right? So that's a reminder that the kind of unity, the kind of harmony between the various lines of singing that make up yourself should have tension. It should be interesting. There should be some kind of conflict which gets partially resolved. So rather than being like a little star, you might be like some romantic thing like Mala or something, where there is endlessly mounting tension which gets partially resolved, and then the tension mounts again, then there's a partial resolution, and then it goes again, right? Nietzsche talks about the kind of unity, the kind of symmetry, or not really symmetry, but harmony that you should try to bring to yourself in a passage which sounds like he has carving in mind. So if you think of somebody carving something out of a piece of wood, you have to use what the wood gives you, right? So there may be knots, there may be faults, there may be splits or cracks in the wood. And if you're clever, you may be able to use those features to actually enhance whatever it is that you're making, right? So what's important is that the result should be the work of a single hand. It should have style. So he says the one thing needful is to give style to yourself. And he talks about cutting away an area of first nature and adding a chunk of second nature. I should explain these terms. So first nature is your instincts, right? Your animal instincts that you get for free simply by being a member of a species. So, a cat has hunting instincts. Human beings presumably have social instincts. Birds instinctively fly and so on. So first nature are the instincts that you get by being a member of your species. Second nature is reactions that are trained and are so intensely trained that they look as if they're instinctive. So, if you talk about sport, a striker in the box doesn't have time to think. The ball arrives and, that player instinctively sticks out a foot and slots it away, right? Well, we're tempted to say in those cases that was instinctive. I mean, literally it can't be, because there is no animal which instinctively knows what to do when a football arrives, low and hard into the danger area of the penalty area of a football pitch. But if you train hard enough and long enough, your reaction can become as if it was instinctive. That's second nature. So you can't train yourself out of your instincts easily. If you have a kind of natural inborn instinct, first nature, it takes an awful lot of training to train yourself out of it. And similarly, it takes an awful lot of training to train your way in to developing something, to the point where it looks like instinct, where it becomes second nature. And this is a theme in Nietzsche, that the task of self-development is strenuous. We saw a bit of this in Schopenhauer's Educator, where he bangs on about how strenuous and dangerous it is to discover the real you, to throw off the layers and layers of accumulated social conditioning in order to find out who you really are. Here, he's shifted from discovery metaphors to creation metaphors, but not creation out of nothing, right? So it's more like you get given your natural self, which is like a piece of driftwood or something, and then it's up to you to fashion it into something stylish. So one of the things that we need to remark on is that Nietzsche offers you the task of becoming who you are, or adding style to yourself, and the criteria for success are aesthetic. So in other words, it's not like Aristotle, where there's a list of features that the great souled person has, and it's up to you to work towards them. Rather, you need to achieve some kind of aesthetic success, some artistic-like success in fashioning yourself. And of course that makes it all jolly interesting, because the thing about art is that if you're a really successful artist, one of the things you can do is change the criteria for success. Right? The artist we remember, if you think about painting or music, very often they're memorable, not because they met the standards of their day to some fantastic degree, but rather they changed what success means, right? So art wasn't the same after Picasso, music wasn't the same after Beethoven, and so on. So possibly somebody might be such a strong poet of the self that they actually change the aesthetic standards by which work on the self is judged. I've used both sculpting and musical analogies here, and the sculpting analogy has the advantage that you're stuck with the properties of the object that you're sculpting. Like, so if it's a piece of stone or a piece of driftwood or something, that metaphor captures the idea that you have to use what you've got, and that you might have to build things that might look like flaws, like knots or fissures, into the design. What those sculpture metaphors miss is that it's an endless task, that you don't make yourself over and then go, right, I'm done. I've now become the person I ought to be. I can put my feet up. It's an endless business, right? It's kind of endless performance art. In that sense, the musical analogy is a bit better, because music can go on forever. So that you want to think of working on yourself, giving style to your personality, as a kind of endless work of performance art, except that it's supposed to be authentic, right? So elsewhere in his writings, Nietzsche is very caustic about actors and people who act parts. So here, in what he has to say about this, there's a forerunner of, you may remember Jean-Paul Sartre's remarks about the waiter. So the waiter who acts the part of waiter and who is very kind of waiterly, he's kind of exaggerated. So this way, monsieur, 2 for dinner, very good. Walk this way, all that kind of stuff, right? And is just over the top waiterishness because he's acting a part. Nietzsche doesn't want that either. Nietzsche wants your self-fashioning to be somehow authentic, and that's what the stuff in Schopenhauer's Educator about, lining up the things that have moved you and looking for the pattern. That's there to secure. And also you find out, of course, in the pinch, in moments of crisis and stress, you find out what you really care about.